So, hello. Yeah, David asked me to talk about my product and what we do. The problem is that the product is just one button, so I couldn't do a demo for 20 minutes. So instead of that, I want to share some common problems that we find in data migration projects for Salesforce. How many of you are Salesforce users? I imagine if you're coming here, you are. And how many of you are administrators? Okay, so the others are business users, right? So salespeople. Okay, so I would say this is useful for both. So our product is clearly not for administrators. It's for anybody who would like to just get their data from old CRM system into the Salesforce. Shortly about myself, I'm co-founder of Import2. It's already the third startup in the data integration space. We did some business analytics about like 5 years ago, but that was like software development oriented. Last product was cloud integration platform, and right now we're working on Import2. And just some stupid facts, like I was crazy enough during the last 10 years to live in 5 different countries. So I'm here in the US for about a year and working on that project. So shortly, what we are doing is super simple service where you log in into website, give us credentials for your old CRM, give us credentials for your new CRM, and click the button. And that's all what you need to get the data moved over. And just in 6 months, we did more than 100 data migrations up to now with so it's like, if you ask anybody who's done project in that, it's like super fast, and it's like very unknown content up to now. But let me talk about the problems, what we faced, and I imagine a lot of consultants and a lot of people who tried to do that at home have fixed. So I think the core problem with data migration today is that it is all based on CSV files. And why is that? Probably for me, the core problem was that I couldn't find a good Excel substitution. And when I showed this presentation to my partner, said, "Oh, you know, there's Excel for Mac." And I was like I didn't even think about it, then I can install it. So, okay, but let's talk about serious. So first of all, CSV, as I understand, it's built by developers for developers. And now when you use cloud systems, it's not developers and IT people who are running the game. And you want to have tools and solutions which are actually usable by business people, by salespeople, by anybody who is making a decision to pay for that software which they buy in the cloud. So CSV is good enough when it's super simple, but it's not working when CEO is trying to move the data from SIBO. Because he can't do that himself. So, and again, if you are the administrator part, you probably can do it yourself and you can manage that until it's like 100,000 records. But data is never perfect, and if you're trying to manipulate really big, large CSV files, you realize that the amount of time and work which goes into trying to get this specific record correctly or this specific column, it just gets too much. So what it all ends up is that a normal CSV-based migration project costs you just like 10K plus, and it's always a pain in the ass, and it's always like hard to get it done. But now coming to some specifics about Salesforce implementation specifically. What do you have to understand? If you want to move data into Salesforce, by default, you can't update system and audit fields. System and audit fields are data like who created the object, when it was created, when it was last modified. So this is something which people get surprised when they hear that. But to do that, you have to call customer support, they have to enable that, and only then you can actually, when you insert the row, you can actually update those fields. So how it looks in the reality you move all your data, start doing the reporting, and then realize, oh, my whole database is created yesterday. And then you have to start again the whole migration project. So you don't run into that problem, call Salesforce support, ask them to enable that before you move the data, and you will be covered. Then, if you're super smart and you use one of those special offers by Salesforce and you jump on the group edition, professional edition, you have to know that most of the data migration tools which are available, they don't work with that. Which again, lots of our customers are super surprised, like, oh, how come, like I was trying to move my data, but there's only context and accounts import, but I couldn't import anything else. You have to think about that. It's the reality. There are like some tools which are coming out, and import is one of them. We support all of the versions, but default tools which are provided by Salesforce, they don't work with group edition and professional edition. One more surprise which comes out. You're paying for the Salesforce, you are using that, and when you move the data, you realize that, oh, there's a daily limit on the amount of data which you can push into the system. And those limits are, it's like super complex formula, so you can't understand how many data points you actually have unless you like find it out somewhere and then, or somebody explains you that. But our experience says, if you don't use special tool which bulk all the requests together, you will run out of the limits. And it can take you weeks to run, to pull in all the data. So again, this is one of the things. It's hard to do it at home, so you better use like special tools or special things to make sure that you're not running into that issue. Or you can buy more API limits or upgrade them, which can cost quite a lot. Again, this is probably not that everybody needs, but it comes very often. So if you have set up custom fields in your old database, very often the CSV export which you get from system, which is the default solution, they either don't include that, or they include that in a way that it's not usable. But if you use custom fields, typically it's the most important data for your company, because you have found a reason to create that field, and it's very important that you also move that over. So there's nothing tricky. You have to just create those custom fields corresponding ones in Salesforce and then do all the mappings. But if you have more than hundreds of those, it can get pretty tricky. You can do mistakes in the names. There's lots of manual work you can try to do manually. This probably applies to any migration project, but what we have found is Salesforce allows you to do a lot of smart validation rules. So the first thing what the administrator does is, oh, let me set it up like ideally this time, because last time it failed, so let me do it right now. And when you start moving the data, 80% of your database doesn't get through because there are validation rules. So format of phone numbers is not right, and how to move in. So one of the things you have to take care of during the migration is making sure that the data, which is in the fields which you're trying to move over, is exactly in the format which you want to have it in a new system. Again, it might be nothing special, but if you have thousands of records and if you're using Excel to manipulate that, it can be pretty tricky. And this is, I think, actually is the biggest problem for anybody. Okay, you move data in, but how do you test that? And there's no solution to that. It's like we are approaching our product a bit differently. I'll explain you how, but if you're trying to do that with CSV-based solutions, it's just you have to go through different data sets, and like in a year you'll probably find it out. Oops, that didn't work. And or oops, I did the wrong mapping here. Should I import again? Or but it's too late in the year because you have like updated the data set a lot. So making sure that data quality is so to say is safe during that stage is super hard, and yeah, and it's like you can do testing, but it's like because the data set is so big, it's very hard. yeah, so that's overall like most of the points which I wanted to talk about, and now just trying to explain the different approach what we are taking with our solution is, as I said, we try to build a product that is actually for end user is just one button, and because that's all what you want. You want to have, oh, can I have all my data from this old system moved to this new system? And that's the big feature of the product, and that's the requirement. So why do we want to make complicated Excel products just to move the data? So we took totally different assumptions that the whole market is taking. So we are doing API-based data migration instead of trying to do loading data on the spreadsheet level. And the way how we ensure the data quality is every time a new customer comes in, he's actually using the data mappings and all those formatting things, what we have done for our previous customers. So the more data migrations we do, easier it becomes for us to assure the quality of your migration because we have run into those issues with our previous customers. Yeah, like our first 10 customers weren't very lucky, so we had to do some manual checks and things like that. And yeah, and we had to work 10 times more than we actually charged for that product. But now when we have done more than 100 and it's like this number is increasing all the time, basically we do it right almost all the time because we've seen all those strange cases, strange formattings, and it's pretty good. And yeah, this is what David asked me. So this is our product. Okay, I probably increased the size of the button, but it's actually big.
That's not the website right there.
So you choose where you're moving from. So you choose, like, right now we support the 3 system, another 4 system will come supported later this month. You log in into your, let's say, Zoho CRM, then you log in into your Salesforce account, and just click the button. And the one thing which we do, which complicates that, is before you pay, we do a sample import for you, so to get the book and understand that this works. So that makes the product 2-step, and not 1-step. But as soon as we looked at the sample, looked at how everything worked, we initiate the full migration. Yeah, and that's all. And probably if anybody here who has done Salesforce migrations, there's like a small challenge which I wanted to put out. Like, if you will be bidding somebody for Salesforce migrations projects, I bet I can do 10 times less expensive. And this is just because we have automated all the things which we will be trying to do manually. And if not, I'm buying you lunch, or probably even more. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. And definitely very welcome to answer any questions, or if you have problems with data importing or anything like that.
You're not going to do a live data migration right now?
Yeah, totally.
Do you have a need to migrate, David?
I'm just kidding. So how many do you get for free for the trial, Mark? You said that you can try like a sample records before you buy it. Is it like 100 or what?
We do 25 records of each type.
Okay.
So pretty much that you can actually judge the quality, and small enough so we can actually do it almost real time.
You have to be like a brand new, so if I want to move to Salesforce, and if I've already been using Salesforce, in our case, the migration project was, it's kind of like trying to fix the plane while it's done. Some of our data in Salesforce, we've got reps working in Salesforce, we haven't migrated everything to Zoho yet. How do you handle that? Is that a problem, or do you prefer that people say, don't do anything in Salesforce, import, and then start working?
So we do have some duplicate checks built into the product.
Yeah.
But with the duplicate checks, it's always somebody changed the email, and there's some situations which just can't guess automatically. So I would say 99% of our all customers are typically using the product during the trial stage. and not later. But I imagine as soon as we become more popular in the market, then people would think, oh, I have this data in my old system, which I just forgot about because it was too expensive or too complex to move. Then we might want to do more of this.
You don't back up their data before you import. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. So,
Probably make money after doing that.
so there are two principles. Like when we go export the data, everything what we do is read only. There's no way we can actually do something with the data. So there's no reason to back up. And one of the reasons why we don't offer that as a feature because it would feel like, oh, we can actually do something. But you can give us just read-only access and that would be enough. And in Salesforce, every record which we write into the Salesforce, we can identify that we actually store the IDs what we have written. And if you say like, get me back to the old stage, we just remove everything what we have written.
Oh,
And you will get like the same stage as you had before.
okay, so I have a record with a Gmail address. I'm importing this guy's corporate email address. I realize, no, none of that corporation. If you got Gmail, you can go back, like find a time machine, you could say, this is what the information was.
Like we can go back in everything what we did.
Okay.
If it was done by salesperson, then not anymore.
So you do have a sense of what the record was before you updated it.
But again, as I said, this is where it gets tricky. As soon as you start updating, typically we're just writing the new data into the system.
You keep track of all the IDs you're writing into
Yeah,
the system,
yeah.
so you can take them out if you want.
Exactly.
But you don't update the record that exists. So we used to, you're looking for dupes, you're never, merging records, correct?
Yeah, that's the trick what we do. We just don't write it into the database because they.
It's all overwrite, you insert, you don't do upsearch or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, yeah,
that helps, okay.
So what about when, I mean, because like at data.com, one of the biggest things in the database is, let's say David, it's david.hack@cloudamp.com, and then he decides to go with somebody else and it becomes dhacked at cloudamp.com, and so you've got the duplicate information. Do you have anything that goes out and checks for that kind of difficult,
So,
that kind of level of
at this stage,
duplication?
our dedupe is like very basic.
Okay.
So when we move the data, like we are trying to see like, oh, if we're moving something like the same with the same emails, but we don't do the matching like it's all. But that's definitely where we are going to improve. Is that's something what like 50% of our customers ask us, like, can you also clean it up before you actually?
Well,
write
yeah,
it?
and there's the other thing too, is like I met him and he was an account exec and now he's a senior vice president of sales, and which one of those records is actually valid versus, you know?
So right now what we suggest to do like super good to do is you move the data and you clean it up with the dedupe tools which are there.
Yeah.
Or you use dedupe tools on your source database, clean it up and then run the migration.
Gotcha.
Which can actually decrease the costs of our service because you will have less records and it will be less expensive.
Oh, is that you shard by record or uninterrupted?
We have different packages and we actually answer the pricing.
Well, my Israeli friend
He's
really.
brutal. He has a jab at you,
He sees it again.
I thought it was free.
I didn't know this time.
So, which is actually super important in our case. Again, it's like doesn't mean that we're doing it wrong. We are. How do I?
That's really expensive, it looks like this.
It's cost
End
you,
of the
you
world,
know,
really, pricing. End of the world pricing.
this will cost you the.
By the way, what's the guess how much it costs?
$1 a record. I'm kidding.
I should increase the pricing.
Can you imagine though? You'd be a millionaire next
We actually moved about 1 million records already.
That's how much inflation this is.
How do I put this?
Not that much, because data.com charges.
But it's on the web.
64 cents a record.
Okay.
Oh, it's in the web.
Ah,
Oh, magic.
So yeah, it's like cheap. It's like no brainer. You just come to us and we help you.
How long does it take?
Sometimes it goes over a couple of days, and typically it's because of the API limits of the source system. Like for example, Zoho doesn't allow you to pump more more than 1,000 requests per day. And there's nothing we can do because we are just taking the business away from them. It's like hard to negotiate. But if we know those limits, then like premium size, like up to 50,000 records, it's like a couple of hours.
There's actually someone who has less API calls than Salesforce.
Uh,
Zoho.
We're competing for the title.
It's like 2 cents a record. If I enter it.
You should have the time that it takes to do that. Just look
Well,
at
it sounds like it varies by source data, right?
Yeah.
But like our competitors do that like a couple of weeks, and when we do real-time demo, people like, ooh, shocked.
If I'm shopping for a tool, right, and I see the competitor's tool and I see your tool, and someone says it takes X amount of weeks, I don't have the time frame here, but I assume it's the same. If you're going to say, let's say,
Yeah,
up
that's a
to
good
X
point.
amount of hours, or
Yeah,
X amount of
that's
days.
a good point. We should, like right now, probably the trick what we try to do is just simplify the trial process so much that there's nobody on the market who will say like, oh, you can do it like right now, and it's like this answers like 10 times more questions than anybody else. So probably, but again, we will be improving, and definitely the timing estimations would be a good idea. And as soon as we've done the sample trial, we can give you a super exact estimate.
Can I import fake data into competitors' Salesforce instance?
No, it's still
Yeah, their
secure
credentials,
because, yeah. If you have credentials, administrator rights, then you can do anything. But yeah, it's still using credentials. And by the way, about the security, as soon as you move the data, and you say like, fine, and like, this is the second button which you have to click, and we just like clean anything from our database, so there's nobody in the universe who can access again the database.
So doing migration, is it encrypted at all?
So we do encrypt all the communication, like the basic HTTPS already encrypting that. We do encrypt like certain amount of data points what we store into our database. But during the migration, it actually doesn't store CRM data into our database. So there's nothing to encrypt. And that's another benefit of API-based things. So we just load it from one system, process it, and load it into the new system, and just forget it. So, and yeah, and like to move it, you can't encrypt it because you have to write it in an unencrypted way. So there's hard to do like even more secure, but yeah, but because we don't leave any traces, it's good enough. And all the passwords, all the things, the Salesforce is just only files, so we don't get even a password. But some systems who don't support open authentication, we encrypt all the credentials. Okay, any other questions?
Thank
Can
you.
you do from
Thank
multiple
you.
sources to the same one?
Yeah. And we just did this type of migration today. Which is, again, it seems like it's complex, but in reality, you just did 2 data migration requests into the same destination. And it doesn't, like, the only thing you have to do, if you have duplicates, then you have to do this additional checks.
But it doesn't, but it can handle like, so let's say we've got like 2 companies that one buys the other, and one has
We
more
have lots of
than
those
the other, and then like it handles custom fields and everything.
Yeah. And like, the trick is if you have same custom fields in the Salesforce, we just do it once and we move the data into those.
How did you, just curious, how did you pick the from? Like, why not SAP or something?
So we are like, as I said, it's a third startup for us, and one of them failed, and one of the reasons it failed, we didn't know what actually building what was useful for users. How we started this company, we built this form without the product, and it was just Highrise and Salesforce. And people clicked it and paid for that, and then we built the product. And yeah, we had to do a couple of sleepless nights, but it was super good validation that somebody needs that. And right now, like the next 5 tools that we're building here, those are coming from actual customers calling us and telling, oh, we need that. Salesforce sales reps asking us, oh, if you can support, because we're having lots of customers moving to that.
And what are the, can you tell us what your next support?
So next we will support Act, NetSuite, Goldmine. We're not sure if it will be easy to do, but definitely on the roadmap. What else?
Microsoft.
Dynamics, but that will not be in this month. It's a bit trickier. And different Sage. They have 3. Like Act was one, Sage, CRM, and Salesforce.
Are you ever gonna go from Salesforce elsewhere, or
We first focus on this niche, but we will do a product which will move you from anything to anything.
There has to be market demand for that.
yeah?
And not just CRMs, we will do anything what you want to migrate: emails, contacts, personal data. Like surprisingly, huge amount of people come to us with water.
You know what?
Water.
Wow.
There's a bunch of questions on Quora, like how do I move my data from Highrise, how do I move my data from Sugar, and like our user just uploaded our solution because it's like really the best. And then the new come and see that this is uploaded solution and they come to us.
And a lot of Salesforce partners are using this too, right?
And yeah, this is something which, because we're a new company, we're just starting with that, but we work already with a couple of consultants who like doing that manually before, and they just realized they can still make money on data migrations, but just use our tool instead, without doing anything. So it's like pretty weird.
All right, that's gonna be at least $15,000. Click, click, click.
But like, okay, talking seriously, like most of the consultants hate this job because like
Yeah.
it's like movers' job. Take one box and move it into the new place. They want to do like consulting, and data migration is not consulting.
Do you make any services money out of this division, or you want to be pure software?
We try to be pure software. So we have this enterprise package where we do things which we didn't automate yet,
Yeah.
but
The things you broke that you want to go.
but it's like ideally there will be nothing like that, and there are so many good consultants who can do tricky things which we can't do. Okay.
Hey, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.